Hello there, BookTube. My name is Daniel. Welcome back to my channel, Guilty Feet, where I have an etrog, but still no rhythm. Lots to do today. I have wanted to talk about a couple of news stories, book-related news stories. I have a cheeky little haul to take you through, some of which was expected, some was unexpected, and then the books I read since we last spoke. Had a good reading week, got 5 books to talk about there. So first of all, one of the news stories that I saw today was that Netflix has entered into a pact with the executives of the Roald Dahl estate, whatever the Roald Dahl Story Company, I think that is the business is called, something to the tune of like $500 million for the rights to produce content based on the entire range of Roald Dahl's stories. That's all his short stories, and then his fiction for children, and also his more adult short stories, most of which I have read in my time. And this got a lot of coverage, picked up by all the TV trade papers and the media coverage, and I just always like to point out whenever these stories about Roald Dahl spring up that he was an unrepentant Jew-hating arsehat, and he can go fuck himself. That's Roald Dahl stories, Roald Dahl news. The other more important news for me today, at least, personal triumph, is that I've been for the last. I just got back on Facebook today for the first time in 30 days. I got banned again. That's my 4th 30-day ban of 2021 so far. Don't ask. I seem to get into all sorts of arguments with various racists, and then they report me for harassment and bullying, and I get kicked. It's too complicated to explain. Anyway, as a result, I was kind of dabbling with Twitter the last couple of months, and today I replied to a tweet of Neil Gaiman's, and he retweeted what I replied, and that was kind of cool. And it has a kind of sort of literary pedigree to the whole thing. So for those of you who are interested, they just released the second part of Gaiman's The Sandman for Audible, and it's got this incredible cast, and there's at the same time, also parallel to this, or when that's all being completed and they're just releasing it in bits, they're also filming a TV version which is due out only next year. But for now, there's this audio version. I'm not a big fan of audio stuff. It's not something that I'm going to listen to. I don't listen to books on audio, but the cast of this is just amazing. They've got James McAvoy as Dream, and then just a non-stop, I think Kat Dennings is Death, but a huge cast of people. Anyway, someone said something about it. Neil Gaiman pointed to a list of the cast breakdown for this second part, season 2 or whatever it is, and I noticed down on the list there was a character called Livia, who I don't remember the character Livia in Sandman specifically. I'm going to have to go back and check, but the voice actress playing the character of Livia in this Audible version, audio version released by Audible in 2021, is a Welsh actress called Sian Phillips. And if the names Livia and Sian Phillips mean anything to you, then you will be as delighted by that piece of casting as I was. It goes back more than 40 years, I think, to the BBC production of I, Claudius, Robert Graves' I, Claudius, where Sian Phillips, 45 years ago at least, played Livia, Claudius's mother. Claudius was played by Derek Jacobi. It's an outstanding production, classic BBC 70s drama, so the sets are a bit rickety. There's no special effects, but it is just a BBC drama of the highest calibre. If you ever get a chance to go and watch, I think there's 8 episodes, I, Claudius. And then, of course, that in those days I was watching TV more than I was reading books, so the time I ended up watching I, Claudius on TV, it was repeated after Robert Graves died, and they put it back on, so I didn't get it the first time it was around. I was probably even too young. I think it was first broadcast in the 70s, so when Robert Graves died, I don't have the thing in front of me. I'm guessing I must have been somewhere between 11 and 14, so somewhere in the early 80s. I can look up when Robert Graves died in a second, and they showed it on television. I'm just going to pause a second because my nose is running. 1 second. Yeah, so I'm back. Anyway, I went and checked when Robert Graves died, so sorry for that. I've got my tissues here, my nose runs again. So Robert Graves died December 85, so I was giving myself a lot too much credit for wanting to watch I, Claudius on the BBC. So I would have been 16. so they showed it over, I think, 8 weeks, probably in those days. You know, they would dug out the show from the archives and put it on television in probably January 85, January 86. Anyway, after watching the TV show, I went back and read the original source material. So I read I, Claudius, Rob Graves' novel I, Claudius, and then there's also a sequel to that called Claudius the God, both of which I highly recommend if you have any interest for classical times, any interest in the Caesars and not just Claudius, but Tiberius is in there, and of course what's his face who fiddles while Rome burns, and Caligula, a fair bit of John Hurt, a very young John Hurt as Caligula. Anyway, so I had commented what a delight it was to find that Sian Phillips, who played Livia in I, Claudius in the early 70s, was playing Livia in the Sam, I think, and Neil Gaiman retweeted me. Now, I'm a 52-year-old man. I'm not ashamed to admit that was the highlight of my day, very possibly my year, being retweeted by Neil Gaiman. So that was lovely. Anyway, enough of tosh. I got a book haul that something which I wasn't expecting. So we were invited out for lunch. The first day, we're in the middle of the Festival of Sukkot at the moment, which is why I've got my etrog here. My lulav is over there on the table, where we build tabernacles, and a lot of families in Israel build little huts outside, and our apartment building outside is all littered with temporary huts, and people eat there. Some very brave people sleep in there as well. And we were invited out the first day of the festival, so this is a Tuesday, to friends of ours. I think I've spoken about it before on this channel, Cindy, who is a terrific reader. She's very busy and fantastically popular, and deservedly so, on Litzy. So I think I spoke about her when I did my interview with Sean the Book Maniac, because he knew her from Litzy. Anyway, Cindy lives around the corner and very kindly invited us. My mother was with us, so my wife, my mother and I walked over to their place, and we sat on their balcony in their sukkah, and we had a fantastic lunch. She made really delicious food, and when I got there, she brought out 2 big bags of books and said, look, I'm getting rid of these, either going to the local charity store or take what you want. So I went through and I picked out 5 books, of which one for sure I definitely wanted, and 4 the fact that I've got them for free because she was going to give them away is probably the best way they would have entered my to be read pile, because I'm not sure I would have got to them otherwise, but I'll tell you what they are now, 1 second. So, of the 5 books that I got from Cindy, and thank you so much, Cindy, some of these will be priorities and some of these will just sit on the shelves until I get to them. So one of them was Pieces by Helen Oyemi. I think I've spoken on this channel a couple of times about a couple of Oyemi books, and the last one I read, Gingerbread, was not great for me. So I probably, I think that was the 4th Oyemi that I read, and I kind of gone a bit colder on her, and this is her most recent book. I think Pieces came out in 2021, so this is a book from this year. I think it's a novel, not short stories. I don't know, maybe. I'm not entirely sure, but I'll have a close look. Anyway, I got this from Cindy. She didn't have many good things to say about it, one of the reasons why she was unhauling it, but I thought, I've read some Oyemi. I think if you commit to an author, or if you've read a few books by an author, I think you also have to read the stuff that isn't great, just to get a somewhat more holistic picture of that author in context. So it's not a high priority for me, but I may add this to my small selection of Helen Oyemi books on the bookshelf and get to this at some point. After that, I picked up Everyone Knows Your Mother is a Witch by Rivka Galchen. I've read one other book by Rivka Galchen. I read some short stories. This is a novel. I think she wrote a first novel like 15, 16 years ago, and then she's had a collection of short stories and some essays. I read the short stories because I was looking at one of those lists of the top 40 under 40, 20 under 40, whatever it is. She was named at one point as one of the authors to watch, even though she has a relatively small body of work. So I had picked up that collection of short stories, and I thought it was perfectly fine. And so this is. She assured me she'd read this, Cindy, and quite liked it, even though she reads books like I read books. You can barely tell they've been touched. So I now have a copy of Everyone Knows Your Mother is a Witch, which I've seen some people talk about, and I'm quite interested to see this. Not a huge high priority for me, but I will get to this. Then the one that was the real result, this is the one I would have jumped up and down for, because this is Whereabouts by Jhumpa Lahiri. I've read everything that Jhumpa Lahiri has published. Big fan of Jhumpa Lahiri. This, like her last book, I believe was written originally in Italian and translated by Jhumpa Lahiri into English, because that's what she does now. She went and moved her family to Italy, learned Italian, now writes books in Italian. She also, I think, is the translator for some big Italian names. I think Dominic Starnone is translated now by Jhumpa Lahiri in the English language version of his books. And this is another book that she wrote. I think the last one was sort of non-fiction about translation, about moving to Italy, which she wrote in Italian and translated into English, and the book was published with Italian on one side and English on the other side. This is a novel, as far as I can tell, Whereabouts, a novel, but it says very clearly on the front page, written in Italian and translated by the author. So far, she hasn't let me down. Everything Jhumpa Lahiri has written has been absolute joy. This is a very short novella-sized book with nice big print and big margins around the page, so I will whiz through this probably sooner rather than later. But there are a couple of new books that have come in that may take priority, but this I'll get to in the next couple of months. Apologies for my voice being hoarser than normal. I think I've got a little bit of I don't know what. Okay, Whereabouts by Jhumpa Lahiri, new into the TBR. Then this was a book that I think I mentioned the last time. Cindy tried to give me books and I didn't take it then, and then a bunch of people said in the comments, "Oh, you really should pick that up," because I've never read it. It's The Group by Mary McCarthy, which, if I remember, was one of the early winners of one of the prizes, a Pulitzer Prize winner or a National Book Award winner or something. It's when was this published? This is a while ago. Published in 1963, and this has got an introduction by Candace Bushnell, who of course wrote the book Sex and the City. I haven't read Candace Bushnell, but I like the fact that it's introduced by her. Gives some context to this. So it's a 1963 fairly famous novel that I've never read, The Group by Mary McCarthy, and I guess there will come a time. It's also got a cover quote by Sarah Waters, India Nights on the back, Hilary Mantel's on the back. So it's probably, if it was 100 pages shorter, it might get read sooner, but it's here, it's in the on the to be read pile, and I will get to it. And then the last book that I took off Cindy goes against all my rules for taking books. This is a book that isn't out yet. It was coming out, I think, this week in hardback, and she had an ARC, an advanced reader's copy, and I took it. And I don't know why. I don't like reading ARCs. I don't, this wasn't a high priority for me. It's not like I desperately wanted to get to it. Now that I have it, and it only just coming out, I feel like I need to read it before everyone else reads it. So I'm jumping on that kind of thing. And I don't really want to. It's, I enjoyed his last book. This is, of course, I'm talking about Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Durr. So this is it says Advanced Reader's Edition on sale 28th of September. So as I'm filming this now, it's Thursday 23rd, and you'll watch this probably on the 24th. So coming out next week, and I've got this giant paperback. It's 620 pages. Oh, excuse me. And I don't know when I'll get to it, and then if it's already come out, it seems silly to read the ARC after it's already come out. But I've got it. I've got this lovely letter from the publisher and the thing, and then it is a bit torn. But yeah, I sort of saw it there. I didn't even realise that it hadn't come out yet, because I'd seen people talking about it on BookTube who always talk about books before they come out. So now I have it. I really liked All the Light You Can See. I don't know if I was rushing to read this, but I have it now, and maybe I will at some point. But most excitingly are the next two books, which just arrived in the mail today. I had books delivered to Israel, and I had them delivered to Israel from Amazon.com, and I'll tell you for why. Amazon.com has a special deal right now, and they did this once before, and then it stopped. Once before, about 2 years ago, they ran this promotion for about 6 months or so, and no one in Israel could believe it. It's the most exciting thing ever to have happened, and there's Facebook groups dedicated to maximising the best of this Amazon.com in the US deal of shipping to Israel, because normally shipping to Israel is very expensive. I can tell you exactly how expensive it is. And right now they have an offer where if you spend over $65, you can get free shipping to Israel. I'm guessing that for many of you who are used to having Amazon Prime and free shipping is you get everything free shipped. That seems like not a big deal. In Israel, I can assure you, having things shipped here from America for free. So we're paying Amazon.com prices. I am leaving aside everyone's complaints about buying from Amazon. Amazon.com prices, can be anywhere from sort of 10 to 40% discounted from the cover price of a new hardback. Paying those discounted prices and free shipping to Israel is huge. So here's the deal. You have to order more than $65 in order to qualify for the free shipping, but because of Israel's massive taxation, if you order over $75, you're going to get taxed import duty when it gets here. So the sweet spot is between $65 and $75. And as I say, there's a whole Facebook group dedicated to how you can get there. Like if you're just below 65, there's a list of products that can get you over the 65 but won't take you over 75. Okay, I ordered 3 books. 2 of them arrived today. The third one should be coming next week. And here's the daftness. This is why this promotion is not going to continue. I chose 3 books. It came to exactly $64.13. 87 cents shy of the minimum amount necessary to get the free promotion. All 3 books were pre-orders. So I ordered these books back in August. None of them come. One came out September 7th, the other September 14th, and the third one I think is going to be coming out at the end of the month or beginning of October. So I was 87 cents shy, so I ordered something else. I ended up some a bath hook, like an adhesive hook to stick on the wall in the thing that I was going to hang my towel on. We'd been talking about something. Anyway, that cost 99 cents. How does Amazon send me? So I was just over $65.12 or whatever it was. But how does Amazon do this? It ships everything separately. So the first thing that arrived was this hook that I never really needed. It cost 99 cents. They shipped it to me in a giant Amazon box, and I looked at the postage on the thing. It said shipping and handling $11, for which they didn't charge me. Now, if they didn't make me get to $65, they would have saved themselves $10. Today I got 2 books. Shipping and handling on these was $15. I'm not being charged, and there's another book coming as well, for which I won't be charged, and I guess that's another sort of $10. So it's around at $35, $40 worth of shipping charges they have just foregone in order for us to get books cheap. It's absolutely thrilling here right now, and people don't. Most people don't order books. Everyone orders everything else from Amazon. I, of course, only order books. So the books that I got today, 2 books arrived in the post. Absolutely thrilling. No surprise to anyone. I have Sally Rooney's Beautiful World, Where Are You? And this is the American edition, of course. So that was exciting. And then even more exciting, straight to the top of the to-be read pile is Colson Whitehead's Harlem Shuffle. So I will probably get to one or both of these this weekend. Very excited, just a thrill, having books delivered from America, free shipping. That's about as good as it gets. That and being retweeted by Neil Gaiman on the same day makes me a very happy man. Okie dokie, let's go back and talk about what I read since last week. So I think I was just starting this, and this is my first ever Émile Zola. This is The Fortune of the Rougon, La Fortune des Rougons, the first in the Rougon-Macquart series of 20 books that he wrote over. I think he published them sort of the rate about 1 a year, over about 20 years, and this first one was published in I don't remember, 1871 or something, I think. I can't remember what it says now. I think it's 1871. Pausing again. And we're back. 1871, and inspired partly by Balzac's massive series, which never even started as a series, but retroactively Balzac, or in the middle, not retroactively, but in the middle of publishing a whole number of novels. Balzac decided this was all forming one story, but Zola sat down to write this, and this is the first in the series, and described in his introduction to this book, talks about how this is going to be the start of a whole thing. We're going to explore these 2 sides of the family, the Rougon and the Macquart, and how they interact with each other, and tell a story about life in France in the Bonaparte era and leading up to the Republic, and this is what he did. So this is the first one. Now, going into this, I'm thinking of Victorian literature. I'm thinking, based on the size, and there's going to be something like a bit hardy and a bit pastoral. Hardy with a capital H, as in Thomas. And of course, it's French, very French. So even though we start with these 2 young lovers, and we're very focused on their clandestine meeting in the middle of the night, and Silver is a young boy, about 17 years old, and he's meeting his lover, and I use those in the most romantic and benign terms. The 13-year-old Miette. So it's a 17-year-old, a 13-year-old. If that gives you the heebie-jeebies, probably don't listen. But it doesn't seem to be. This is not a sexualized relationship. This is a relationship of two sort of outcasts. Miette's father has been imprisoned for, and she is constantly bears the brunt of this mark that her father is a criminal. And Silver is from the worst part of the family. One part of the family has enriched itself, and the other part of the family has been screwed out of inheritance. And Silver is the one left, is discarded and unloved. And so these two troubled children essentially have found each other against all the odds, and keep their relationship secret from their elders and their family members, and meet. And at the beginning of this, we have a long, involved description of the place where they meet and this time together. And it appears that this is an important meeting, that Silver is about to go off and join the revolution and fight for the Republic and try and bring down the monarchy. And Miette is very worried about losing him and saying goodbye, but she's such a young creature, and they fall into each other's arms. And as I say, it's the love is very pure. This is not a sexual thing. And as I say, if it's still creepy for you, these two teenagers, then you may not enjoy this. But it's very idealized and romanticized and pretty and simple. And then what follows? We get a family drama, we get jealousy, we get feuds over money, we get petty small town rivalries where the best thing that can happen to you is that you get elected mayor, and then you have some standing in the community and the income that goes along with it. Or if you get a government job, that's even considered even higher, and so you're placed higher. But if you have no money at all, then this is the world we're living in. And the villages of the surrounding towns are starting to gather and are forming a force that they hope will take down the monarchy and end the reign of the Bonapartes and vive la Republique. And it's still a decade or two before that could happen successfully. And so tragedy ensues. I don't want to give away too much plot. So we start in the very micro Silver and Miette and their love, and then we pull back and we see the backdrop against which this is taking place. We learn about the different parts of the family, and what I believe we'll see in the next 19 volumes that come after this is that this is really the introduction. That we've seen lots of different parts of the family. We've seen the different brothers, what they stand for, what they believe in, and what they're prepared to do to achieve their goals. And we're going to focus on different parts of the family in each of the subsequent novels, and learn more about them, and we'll come back. And so I think these characters are going to reappear at different times, and the novels will jump forwards and backwards in time, with this being, I believe, probably the starting point. And this novel jumps forward and backwards in time. In fact, while I'm reading this, some of the leaps either back to a memory of an earlier time or forward, or we learn things and then we only see them, or we learn that someone has died. It's suddenly on the page or so and say, wait, we've been following this character, suddenly they're dead. And then a chapter later we'll get the scene where their death happens. It reminded me, as a strange leap, it reminded me very much of Pulp Fiction in that way. That sort of inconsistent and sort of fidgety relationship to time, where you see, spoilers for Pulp Fiction, you see Bruce Willis machine gunning John Travolta to death on the toilet reading Modesty Blaise, and then we jump backwards in time and see John Travolta still alive, back in the cafe wearing the t-shirt that he's had to change into after blowing Jules' head off, and we end with John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson sort of walking out. He's still alive, so even though we know later on he's going to die an ignominious death on the loo. Anyway, there's something of that here, something of that sort of really interesting way of revealing and telling a story. The sum of the whole thing is that this was successful for me. So this is probably a 20+ year project. I don't have the next one in the series. I'm not ordering books at the moment, despite the fact that I just showed you all. I'm not ordering backlist books at the moment. Excuse me. And so I'm not sure when at some point in the next 6-9 months I will order the next one of these, and I haven't decided which one the next one is yet. But this was successful for me. It's a short one, so it's like reading the Warden, the first of the Barchester Chronicles is a short one. I don't know if they get much bigger than this, but if they're all like this, then this will be a very nice project to have on the go until my 70s. The Fortune of the Rougon by Émile Zola. It's a win. Okay, after that, graphic novel again. And this was Outcast, written by Robert Kirkman, who was the creator of The Walking Dead, which has gone on to be a hugely successful franchise, great TV show, and there's even been a spin-off of the TV show. They're talking about another spin-off. Anyway, so he's got some weight. And the comic book series was hugely successful, around about 150, 160 issues. And this was an attempt at another series called Outcast. And after I read this, I was looking up, and I saw there's already been a 2-season TV show that's already run, 2 sort of 10, 12 episode seasons on one of those Cinemax or something like that, and been cancelled. But I didn't know anything about that, so I missed this when it came out. It must have come out 5-10 years ago, whatever. This is like an Exorcist kind of story. Now, I don't do horror of any kind. I don't watch horror films. I don't read horror books. So this is about as close as I can get to that. We have a lead character who, everywhere around him, people get possessed, and happens happened his whole life and ruined his life, from his mother to all sorts of other people in his life. And now he's trying to look for answers. We've got six issues here. I think this series is still ongoing, so they're up to 30, 40 issues here. And clearly Kirkman understands how to piece things out little by little, so that you'll keep coming back on a monthly basis. And I think comic books cost now $4 or $5 a time, and you'll lay out your money every month, or that's on a regular schedule. I think these aren't being published as regularly as that, but every 2-3 months you'll come back to a story and lay out another $5 for another single issue. This has got the first 6 issues, and this would have sold for $9.99. I picked this up at much cheaper than that. So 6 issues. Will I read more? No. I got the point. It's never going. It's not ever going to complete its story. Because that's the nature of these things. They're just episodic, and they keep you going, and just when you think you've got the answer, why is this happening to him, there'll be some other reason or some other secret or something will happen. And I find it all a bit tiresome. This was fine, if that's what you're interested in. If you like exorcisms and demons and stuff like that, then there's plenty of that in here. It's creepy as all get out, and I'm kind of over it. That was Outcast Volume 1, A Darkness Surrounds Him by Robert Kirkman. After that, I read a book of poetry, a short book of poetry. This is actually 2 pamphlets. This is by the poet Peter Scalpello, and this was Acting Out and Chem and Other Poems. So two like a double-sided thing, there's the pink and the black. So that one is Chem and Other Poems, and this is Acting Out, and it's got a barcode on both sides, and paid one price for all this. It was £7, which I think was the reason why I bought this in... So when I was in London in June, I went to Foyle, so I did the big book haul of all the books that had been sent to my mum, about 140 books, and I went out and bought about 10 more. So I think, with respect to the book haul you just saw, I wanted to give you this statistic. So I took in to my to-be-read pile in June about 150 books, and I wanted to see if I could justify, buying the Colson Whitehead and Sally Rooney, bringing in new books. So it's 4 months since I got those 150 books, and I wanted to see how many books I'd read in the 4 months. So 150, I said at the time, was about a year's worth of reading. And actually, so I said, if I've read 50 of them, that's a third of the, it's 4 months, a third of the, if I read 50 out of the 150, then I'm on track, and it's okay if I bring in a couple more books. And actually, since I got to London, so the first book that I read out of that big haul, I've read 59 books. So I don't feel so bad taking more. I don't know. I have to justify myself to anyone. Anyway, I don't know if you remember, I bought this book because it said on it, signed by the author. And when I opened it up, for some reason, I was inspired to sort of look let's look at the sign of the. And there were 3 copies of this there. I looked at each one, and each one of them had a different dedication, which I thought was lovely. So mine says, signed by the author, and it just says, "You are gorgeous." That's the one I chose because it made me feel gorgeous. So thank you for that, Peter. And I tweeted the poet after I bought it, and he kindly responded. So I'm not a good reader of poetry. I pick this up and I read the whole thing cover to cover. In this case, cover to middle, and then flipped it over and read cover to middle on the other side, because that's the way this book is done. There's some good stuff in here. There's a lot about starting relationships, casual relationships, breakups, hookups and breakups. I think I described it in my Goodreads view. It's super queer in all the best ways, and I think there's some good work in here. I'm not sure, and there's a lot of playing with formatting. So you've got poems this way around, and you've got poems that look like that, and you've got then some sort of fairly standard layouts of poems, and it's fun in that way. In that this poet is. Oh, hello, 1 second. Sorry about that. My mum wandered out and couldn't understand why I was talking to myself on the computer. Anyway, Peter Scalpello, Acting Out and Chem and Other Stories. Good modern queer poetry, hookups and breakups, I think is the essential part of it. But he's playing with the form here, and this was as much as I'm, I still am learning how to read poetry, and especially modern things that no one is already telling me. Oh, this is a classic, and this is important, and this poem is doing something breathtaking. I'm having to make decisions for myself about whether a poem is successful or not, and I don't think I have the tools necessary to do it, so I can only go by my taste and judgment. I quite liked these. I thought there was some real verve and personality there, but I'm not going to revisit them and pick out, and there's no phrases that have stuck in my mind. It's just I have an impressionistic sense of that this was something interesting and fun and new. So Peter Scalpello. After that, I went back to an older well that I know is going to be more successful, and this was Trouble Is What I Do by Walter Mosley. This is, I think, the 5th or the 6th in the Lynn and McGill series. So he has an Easy Rawlins series, which they're set originally in the late 50s, early 60s, and move forwards in time. So I think the last one we're already at the end of the 60s, maybe the early 70s. But this series, Lynn and McGill, is entirely contemporary series. So in this one, there are mobile phones, for example, and computer surveillance and stuff like that. This is very short. This is Walter Mosley treading water. It's a novella, like big print and wide margins. Nothing here that we haven't seen before, and yet it's just terrific. This is snackable and delicious on every level, because Mosley is not just writing a detective story or a noir story, and this is a classic story of a man comes to Lynn and McGill and an old man asks him to deliver an envelope to a young socialite before she gets married, and this has important information that she needs to know about her ancestors and her background, and specifically it was a note from her grandmother. Within this world we get race and crime and class and money, and just the classic tropes of American crime writing and noir fiction of the last 100 years or so. So even though this is a kind of a standalone story, we know some of these characters, we've seen them before, Mosley's canvas is so huge. He's taking on race and what it is to be a black man in America in 2021, and doing it with real heart and passion and not too much sincerity, but enough there to make you believe. Good stuff. You'll wolf this down, and actually this might be a good place to start if you never read Walter Mosley, because it's like 160 pages. You get the whole thing, and you might get to the end of it and say, well, what was that? And then if you ponder and think about it, you say, okay, the story was very simple, but the milieu, the setting, actually the concerns of these characters and their experiences is what you take away from this. Trouble Is What I Do by Walter Mosley. And then the last book that I read this week was this was a tremendous recommendation. I think originally came from Hannah. Channel used to be called Let's Talk About Books Baby, but it's no longer called that. I left my tissues over there. No, I haven't got them here. Oh, Man Blows Nose on video camera. how entertaining for you. This is Say Nothing by Patrick Radden Keefe. A great recommendation for narrative non-fiction. This is about the IRA, about the Troubles in Northern Ireland from, say, 68 through almost up to the present day, but certainly let's go up to the Good Friday Agreement and then beyond, and obviously it touches on Brexit and the implication of that for the Good Friday Agreement, and just a tremendous piece of reporting and narrative non-fiction. Keefe brilliantly starts with a micro. We have one family, and we look at what happened. There's one family of, I think, 10 children whose mother was disappeared, and one of, say, I think 20 or 30 people that were disappeared over a period. And that's a very specific description of a crime that we may be more familiar with from Chile and some of the regimes in South America, where this happened on a regular basis, and people never found out what happened to those family members. In Northern Ireland, a much smaller population, a much more close-knit community, actually the number of people who were disappeared, that is, who disappeared and whose bodies were never recovered and no one knew what happened to them, who did it, whether it was in this case, it would have been the provisional IRA, or whether it was the original IRA, or whether it was the Republicans or the British Army, and it starts off a set of rumours and just a lack of closure. And so we start focused in on this one family, and then we also look at the lives of some of the people who operated in the IRA, who carried out terrible atrocities. Bombings, in some cases successful, in some cases less so, but whose intent was, who would not have been disturbed by civilian deaths, even if they didn't necessarily seek out civilian deaths. But we find that these IRA members, actually a lot of the violence within the IRA was aimed at other members of the IRA, people who broke the code, people who gave information to the British, gave information to the army, or gave information to the other side. So what they call them touts, someone, a snitch. Actually, the majority of the violence visited on those who were disappeared or killed and left in the street, because there is nothing worse than betraying your own side. So we see some of the people who were involved in the IRA and some of the terrible things they did. We see them getting caught. We see them spending time in prison. We see them going on hunger strikes. We see them being force-fed in the most violent and dehumanizing way, because it would have been humiliating for the British for them to have died in captivity. So they decide to take these prisoners who are on hunger strike in order to achieve some kind of political goal, and they hold them down, force things into their mouth, and shove fluids. It's very disturbing. And you see these perpetrators of acts of terror as they grow older and become more disillusioned with the violence that they have perpetrated. Now, I want to be very clear that I don't want to make any moral equivalency whatsoever between the perpetrators of violence and its victims. That's not what Keefe is doing, and that's not what I want to do. But I think in humanising the people who committed acts of violence, acts of terror, and understanding that what seems like the most important thing in the world when you're 23, when you're 35 and nothing has happened, and the people that gave the orders are sitting pretty while you have spent most of your youth in prison and being brutalised, then it suddenly seems like it was all for nothing. And certainly that's the impression we are given by some of these members of the IRA who please come before me 1 second. We see them later in life very disillusioned and broken as people, broken with the guilt of what they did, and often what they did to their own people and members of their own community, and just the sense that it was all for nothing, because as much as we look at the Good Friday Agreement and we look at the way things are now in Northern Ireland, where we're not seeing people being bombed, there are not nail bombs in the UK, there are not people being kneecapped. Everything in the end was, we achieved this through political means, not through violent means. And so the people who saw themselves as soldiers and revolutionaries to find out that everything they did meant nothing, and the people that separated themselves off from the acts of violence and went into politics and framed themselves as negotiators and politicians, they are the ones who've won all the praise, and they're the ones being receiving the accolades as having achieved peace. At the centre of all this whole thing is a man called Gerry Adams, who you will either know or not know. Gerry Adams, in my memory, so when I was watching the news, Gerry Adams would appear on the news. He was the spokesperson for Sinn Féin, which was the political wing of the IRA. So the IRA soldiers, terrorists, soldiers, freedom fighters, whichever, take your pick. And the political wing is Sinn Féin, and Gerry Adams was actually elected to the British Parliament. Northern Ireland, part of Britain, he ran in Northern Ireland, elected by locals, refused to sit in the British Parliament in London, refused to come to London because he wouldn't recognise it, but he had this role. Whenever he would appear on the news, because he was a member of Sinn Féin, which is the political wing of the IRA, the BBC was banned from broadcasting his voice. This is one of the ways that the British government tried to delegitimise the people fighting for Irish independence. So he would be interviewed. He would talk. His voice it wouldn't be his voice. It would be dubbed over with an Irish actor saying the exact words. So you see him, you see his lips move, and you would hear another person's voice saying the words that he had obviously said. It was the bizarrest thing, and we used to watch it whenever he was on the news. It was a weird thing. Anyway, so we knew Gerry Adams as this political figure. Revealed here, I think it really makes a very strong case that Gerry Adams, who says to this day, I was never part of the IRA, I never took part in any violence, I was always a politician. Here we find that the people who were soldiers in the IRA, the people who did carry out bombings, say absolutely he was the leader of the IRA. He was the one who sent us to A, carry out bombings, B, to kill touts and snitches and disappear people, and that there is blood on his hands. And Gerry Adams, who sits in retirement with his family, is smiling and considered, I imagine, been nominated more than once for the Nobel Peace Prize, while the people who carried out deeds which they claim he ordered spent many years in prison and became broken, disillusioned, and often suicidal. It's just an outstanding piece of work, just a fine bit of non-fiction. Nobody comes out of it unscathed. And I say, again, I'm not, my sympathies for someone who's committed an atrocity, who 20 years later, after serving maximum time in prison, realises that this was just hopeless and a terrible way to behave. My sympathies only go so far. You commit the act of atrocity, you have to be responsible for it, and I believe they, in some cases, they do take responsibility for it. But of course, my sympathies are much more with the victims, the families of the people who were disappeared, and the victims of these terrible crimes. But there's nobody comes out of this with anything, except somehow Gerry Adams has charmed his way through and ended up as some kind of hero. It's a fantastic story. Say Nothing by Patrick Radden Keefe. He has a new book out this year on a completely different subject, talking about the Sackler family and the opioid crisis. And I am now super keen to read it as a result of this. And I haven't bought the book, so I finished this, and I've started a book, a thriller called Telephone, which I'll read quickly over the weekend, and then hopefully get to probably Harlem Shuffle, I think will be the next one. So that is all my thing. I'm talking to you for 45 minutes like this. You watch me cough, you watch me blow my nose, you watch me look over as my mum came out. One thing, if you've watched this far, go over to Kim's channel at Middle of the Book March. She and her entire family have tested positive for COVID. She was looking absolutely fed up in her last video, and please go over, send her healing vibes. This too shall pass. Thank God everyone's vaccinated, no one is suffering too badly, but it's a miserable time, and please give her only love and support. And for anyone out there who is feeling unwell or going through this, from my personal experience, being vaccinated helped me. Kim makes it very clear that she's very pleased and that she and her whole family were vaccinated, so they're not suffering, so they're not hospitalised, they're not having breathing difficulties, being put on respirators, but it's still unpleasant. Stay safe, be well, God bless, bye.